Thank you. My name is Gary, and I'm an alcoholic. And it's good to be here. I was here once before at a meeting a couple of years ago. I remember a few faces. I said they're here, and then I see two very dear friends here that I've been able to share a lot of love with over Barbara and her husband Fred. And it's good to see them. I always enjoy them. Fred and I used to drive a bus together. It's been... yeah. I had a very enjoyable trip coming up here. We came up yesterday. We were at the meeting in Solvang. My wife spoke in Solvang last night. And then we drove on into Paso Robles and spent the evening with John and Phyllis C., who send their love. She's still very ill, and she sends her regards and her love to all of you. And we spent the day with them today, and then drove on down here. And what a wonderful meeting we had all day. So we just had a good AA thing, and Johnny and Sophie L. drove up with us, and they're a treat just to have for 15 minutes a day. You know, I wish I could have them with me each and every day of my life. And it's a spiritual experience with both of them. They're lovely people. And thank you for coming with us and sharing your weekend with us. You know, I've been kind of going over my life a little bit here this last week, knowing that I was going to be up here, and I've never talked up here in this area before. And, you know, and I know just exactly what our guidelines are, you know, for talking. And so I try to stick to those, you know. This is our program, and this is what we're here to hear. You know, we're here to hear how I made this program and what I do today to stay sober and what have you, and it's very important. And, you know, I'm probably like most of you in this room. I didn't start out my life to be an alcoholic. You know, I started out with all the dreams and the hopes and the aspirations that every young fella does in life, you know, to prosper and do well in life and to have the good things, you know, that God intended for all of us. And, you know, it wasn't until I was 45 years old that I ever started to receive any of those things. Although I had many material things in my life over the years that were given to me that I thought I earned. I always thought I earned everything and deserved it. And found out when I was 45 years old that I didn't deserve a damn thing, so he took them away from me anyway, you know. And I know why he did today. You know, that's not true, he didn't. You know, I destroyed all those things myself. But I like to blame somebody, though. Why not God? You know, I came from a nice little just average middle-class family. You know, my father and mother were just nice people. And, you know, I have a twin brother, and I had another brother who was older than myself, and I adored that guy. I idolized him. You know, he was my dream man. I thought, you know, anybody that could be like my big brother, you know, was a pretty marvelous guy. You know, and I tried to emulate him and be like him all my life. And so I had big trouble because I always wanted to be older, you know. And this is how I started out. I started out with a very egotistical attitude in life. You know, from the time I was a little kid till today, I'm still an egomaniac. You know, and I have to work on those defects each and every day of my life. But you know, I had all the opportunities and probably all the advantages that anyone would have living here in our country of ours. You know, schooling and everything else. So I got a fair education. But when I got out into the business world at an early age, I decided that you know, that I was going to start my steamrolling days right from then on. I didn't drink a hell of a lot during the school years because I was very much involved in athletics. Not in school. I got into professional athletics. I was a fighter, and I fought all over the state of California and around the western states of the country, and did very well. And so I didn't get involved in drugs or alcohol very much at that time. I did a little partying once in a while when I was out of training. But what I did was I got into the business world because my career had ended very abruptly. Some guy kicked the shit out of me, and I decided that was not the thing that I wanted to spend the rest of my life doing, is getting up off of a mat and you know, and talking to myself for a week or two after it, you know. So I talked to my managers, and I didn't have a higher power in those days. And, I told them that I quit. And they said, "You can't do that." And I said, "Yes, I can. Watch me." And I did. And with my education, I went into the business world. And I started out very well. As a matter of fact, I started out too fast. And what I had done with a little bit of reputation that I had achieved in athletics and what have you, I had reached an executive status in life at the age of 24. And I was making a lot of money. I had a lot of opportunities ahead of me. And I got married and to a very beautiful lady. And she had 2 little babies that were still in diapers when I married her. They were not mine. And I raised these 2 children, who were my stepsons, as my own. And, I'm going to try to make a lot of things short here so that we don't bore one another with my drunkalogue and my entire life story, because it's really not that interesting, other than the fact that I was crazy right from the start. When I got married, I decided that I was going to have everything and give them everything on the face of this earth. I might add that I married this lady, and she had a lot of money. Now, that had nothing to do with my marrying her, because, being an alcoholic, I didn't think of anything like that, and I, of course, didn't know I was alcoholic then, and I would never have admitted it then anyway, because I had to die a lot of times out there before I'd ever admit that, But I thought that the power and prestige that she and her family would have behind me and my business career would carry me to the heights of I was figuring like the Kennedys or the DuPonts, something like that, And, coming from a little rural area like Bellflower, California, and Long Beach, and what have you, I figured Wilshire Boulevard was a good start. So this is where I went to work. I spent most of my days right from the gate in business in the bistros and bars in Los Angeles and Hollywood. This is where I conducted my business. Places like the Blarney Castle and Ollie Hammond's and the various other fancy upholstered sewers up there, that we all have been to, And my life started out very good. Very good, very good. I was involved with a lot of people of power, and I liked it. I loved it. I loved that feeling of having power. I didn't realize that before because I was always kind of a gentle person, even though I had been in a vicious career at the start of my young life. But I was really kind of a gentle person, And I found out that I was in a dog-eat-dog world, out there in that business world. And these people up there would eat you alive. So I got pretty vicious myself, and I grew and I grew and grew with this company that I had gone with and what have you, and I had more power. Pretty soon I was the head of the entire company on the internal affairs of this company, and I was about 26 years old, And by this time I was a full-blown alcoholic and didn't even know it, didn't even realize it, because the people that I associated myself with at that time did the very same thing that I did. They drank on a daily basis. My day would start out at 11 o'clock in the afternoon for lunch, and it would end maybe about 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We did our business deals there. We did our socializing there, And then we'd go back to the office. I'd be at the office for maybe an hour or two, clear up what little paperwork I might have to do, and we'd be right back out to a bar someplace, and we'd all be meeting someplace and drinking. Now, I figured that I was a normal drinker. Now, I worked in Los Angeles and I lived in Long Beach. But I realized that I had a problem, even though I was not ever admitting to the fact that I did. I realized that there was something wrong with my drinking. My intelligence told me that, because I kept waking up in strange places. I'd leave my office at night and I'd wake up like in San Francisco, and that's not normal. Or I'd wake up underneath a train trestle with the PE train going over my head, in the morning, or something like that, I remember one night I left my office and I'd stopped for a couple of drinks, I thought. I don't know how many I must have had after drinking all day. And I woke up on the runway of the Long Beach International Airport. Out at the landing port where they just come right in. I woke up and I got coming on over my head, And I knew I had a problem. I knew then I had a problem, because I wasn't going anywhere and I don't know what the hell I was doing at that airport. You know, and I did strange things like this, you know, and my wife didn't understand it. I don't know why she didn't, because I always tried to explain it to her and be reasonable about it. You know, I'd tell her, you know, things like, well, you don't understand. You don't deal with the people that I have to deal with every day. And I drank a little bit too much last night, and I was on my way home, and I'm sorry I didn't make it. But believe me, I wasn't with some other lady, or I wasn't doing this, and I wasn't doing that. And I'd try to reason, well, maybe so. Maybe you did mean right, and blah, blah, blah. You know, and I'd usually get out of it. And this went on and on and on and on and on. You know, for years. I drank until I was 45 years old. And, you know, finally I realized that by the time I was about 30 years old, you know, that I was in serious trouble, you know, because the people that I was working for, they began not to trust me any longer. They began not having that faith, you know, in me that I thought they should have. And I started having internal problems with employees. I had a lot of people that worked for me. And, you know, and I knew that my days were numbered. I knew that I had a drinking problem. You know, and what I'm looking at right now, you know, not to stop in the middle of anything, but I'm looking now as I can sit here today sober, you know, and I'm seeing the progression of our disease in a young man's life and the destruction that happened over this slow, you know, this slow process, this long, slow process that it took me to hit the bottom, to get me to the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, and it was amazing. I can look at it today, and I can't believe what happened in my life. And I see it in so many others, you know, the progression of this disease happening, you know, and it still astounds me today. You know, and I started having serious problems in my family life, and with friends, you know, like all of us, you know, and people didn't want me around as much at social functions. And, you know, and I dealt with a lot of people in the movie industry, a lot of movie stars and things like this in my travels, in my work and stuff like this. I had studied my major in school was dramatics, theater arts, radio, television, and what have you. And I had the opportunity to do some TV work, some radio, a lot of radio work, and I did a couple of pictures too. And so I knew a lot of people in that, and I used them in my business. I did business with some of them, what have you, and made some friends in that field, and watched some of their lives destroyed by alcohol and what have you. Some very prominent people that you all know. And, you know, and I could see the progression of the disease in them, and I could see the progression of the disease in friends of mine, but I could never see it in myself. You know, if it was the people, it was the places, it was the things that were destroying my life. If my wife would shape up, if those rotten kids would shape up, you know, if the people that I worked for would just listen to me more and take my advice more, their lives would be better and their company would be enriched by it, you know. And this was the way that I lived. This was my attitude, you know, and it was terrible. And, you know, and I started spending a great deal of time alone by this time. People didn't want to associate with me. My wife had left me a couple of times by this time, and the children were not having anything to do with me. But yet I still cannot see anything wrong with my drinking patterns. You know, when I became unemployable as far as I was concerned in the industry that I wanted to be involved in, I decided to go back into an industry that I'd been raised in. My father was a dry cleaner, and I knew the dry cleaning business very well. And so I opened up a dry cleaning store. You know, I figured, well, if I can't work for anybody else, I'll work for myself. You know? And in a couple of years' time, I destroyed that business. Totally destroyed it with alcohol. You know? And by this time, I was drinking in the mornings. You know, and I was drinking 24 hours around the clock. I didn't go to bed without a bottle near me. You know, I was about 37, 38 years old by this time. And, you know, and my life was not good, you know. I knew it. I knew my life wasn't good. I knew the pain that I was in. You know, and there's nobody in the world that I can tell that to, you know, out there. I couldn't tell these people that I hurt. I couldn't tell the people that I worked with and that worked for me, or my family, or what few friends I did have that were really good, what I considered good friends in those days. You know, those were my drinking partners. You know, that I really felt bad inside. I really felt rotten. You know, and then my life was a shambles. You know, and my marriage was a shambles, and my children's lives were a shambles. You know, I couldn't tell anybody that. You know? what a blessing it is to be able to sit here and share that with other alcoholics, you know, and when I'm feeling bad and when I hurt, you know, when things are wrong, you know, and they understand it. They understand where I'm coming from. You know, I didn't have that then. Didn't have that out there, you know. Till the day my father died, he didn't understand me. You know, he loved me, but he didn't understand me, you know. And, you know, and this was the way my life was to go. You know, and I finally became totally unemployable, and I had lost the family, and I'd lost everything. I'd lost the properties, the prestige of life that I thought was important, all the material things that were important in life. I thought nothing of the inside feelings, you know, of the respect, the self-respect. By that time, I'd lost all my self-respect, you know. By the time I was 40, 41 years old, I had no self-respect left. I didn't give a damn one way or another what anyone else think. The only thing that was important to me and my only God in this world was the bottle. That was my God. I lived and breathed only for that drink. I didn't care how I got it. I didn't care where I got it. I didn't care what kind of a atmosphere I was in to drink it. Didn't make any difference if it was a beer bar or whether it was one of those upholstered sewers that I used to hang out at. If I had enough money to go with one by that time, which I most normally didn't by that time, you know. And I was working from company to company by this time. I was going from job to job to job to job, you know, one after the other. A continuous line of dry cleaning stores, standing on a press, sweating it out, get enough money to drink on for that night, you know. Here I'd come all the way from Wilshire Boulevard, the big homes and everything else, and the fancy cars and all the material things and all the power that any one human being could have. I had more than I deserved ever, most of my life. And, you know, and what it finally did to me, and what finally happened to me was that I wound up on Skid Row. I lived in the streets. I lived in the streets. My wife had died. My wife had died. I'd taken her down the tube with me. She became very ill with cancer and had come back to me because she had no other place to go. Her family had disowned her because of me, because of the shame that I'd put them all through and what have you. And she came back with me to die. And she was alcoholic by this time herself. She drank alcoholically to kill the pain in her life and to kill the physical pain that she was going through. You know, I came off the streets and tried to clean myself up a little bit and to supply a place for us to even live in, you know. And she died one night in my arms. In our sleep, I was in a drunken stupor. Her liver exploded, and she bled to death in my arms. I woke up in the middle of the night in a pool of blood, screaming, gone completely crazy, you know. And I was to go out and drink 2 more years. Viciously in the streets. I'd taken what physical prowess I had left in me, and I'd used it. I'd used it to hurt other people out there because I couldn't work. I lived in the alleys and in the streets, and I slept behind buildings. I stole and I thieved when I could. I did everything that was humanly possible to support my habit. It didn't make any difference to me what it was. I'd been beat to death out there in those alleys. I'd had my head beat in. This side of my face is completely rebuilt. This is not my face. This is plastic from the inside. I've been shot. I've been knifed out there. I've been killed. I was clinically dead 3 times. Why I was brought to life, I don't know. I do today. I didn't then, you know. I know that it was for me. It was for me to sober up one day, I guess, and to come to rooms like this, and to the hospitals, and to the institutions, and to the jails, and what have you, and share my life, my experience, my strength and hope with others. You know, to share what love I have today. You know, when my heart is full. My heart is full today. You know, and it's because of these rooms. But anyway, when I had finally reached my very bottom, and I was living out there in the streets, I knew that I was going to die. I knew that it was a matter of time. I was physically and totally gone. There was nothing left of me. I may have weighed about 130 pounds. And for me, that's light. You know, even for somebody as short as me, but I was very, very husky. And I had alcoholic paralysis in my legs, and I couldn't talk. I couldn't talk. I couldn't tell you my name. I couldn't tell you anything. I couldn't tell you where I lived, where I ever lived. I couldn't even tell my Social Security number. They would arrest me, and time and time and time and time again. And if they hadn't had a first make on me from the first time I was ever arrested, they'd never known who I was, because I didn't know myself, you know. And I would spend time in these jails, in these county jails, from San Diego to San Francisco, and you know, and dry out and come back out and do it again and again and again. You know, dry out and come out and do it again and again and again. You know, I was never arrested in my life until I was 41 years old. By the time I was 45 years old, I bet I'd been in jail 100 times. You know, I don't know what God, how He protected me so. You know, for what reason He must have protected me. You know, because, you know, in all those years I drove an automobile like a maniac. I had one 502 in my entire drinking life. I never drew a sober breath on a daily basis from the time I was about 25 years old until the time I was 45. I was never sober. Never. You know? How wonderful it is to feel alive today. You know, I walk into one of these doors, into a meeting of alcoholics, anonymous, any place. I don't care where it is, how big or how small. The adrenaline just starts pumping in me. The good feelings just start rushing through me. The love just starts rushing through me. And I look out here at the faces of where I'm sitting across the table, and I can look at the faces of another alcoholic. I can share 5 seconds with one on the phone. You know, my heart is glad. You know, how I got to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is a miracle. I had tried Alcoholics Anonymous once before, to no avail. I just couldn't make the program. My ego and my horse shit just would not allow me to make it. I was so full of me and I, and you know, I could tell you how to run your program and how to run your life, but you know, I was self-will run light. You know, I was good at that, you know, but I couldn't run my own, you know, or run any kind of a program in my life. I had no program for living. You know, I had a real good program for destruction. You know, I could destroy your life or anyone else's life just as fast as I could my own. Maybe, usually faster. I destroyed a lot of lives out there. You know, I bet there are people still talking to themselves out there, because I was a maniac. You know, you know, if I wanted a bottle of wine and couldn't get a bottle of wine, I'd kick a liquor store window in and take it. Walk in and take an armful of wine and walk out and head for an alley somewhere. You know, that's how bad I was. You know, or I'd beat your head in the back of an alley. You know, of course I got it beat back a few times. You know, and that I didn't like that. I thought that was kind of unfair of them. Fight back, cowards. But you know, it's just a miracle. You know, and how I got here was simply one day I was in Long Beach City Jail. This didn't actually come to me until after I'd been sober about 4 years, of how I got back to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I walked through these doors again, and how my life started over again. I was sharing this with my wife one night, you know, because my memory is not too good. You know, I don't know what that's from. I can't imagine. I drank an awful lot of wine. You like wine? Anybody? Any winos in here? Hey, you know, for a guy that drank scotch, you know, and all that stuff for so many years, you know, and stuff like, I got on that wine, man, that's a toot. Whoo! Man, that stuff will make you climb trees backwards. You know, that stuff is wild. You know, I used to walk down the street with it squirting out both ends. You know, that stuff does things to you, you couldn't believe it. You know, and I loved it, because I got there right now with it, you know, especially that muscatel. Wow. God. Oh, man. But anyway, I got out of that Long Beach jail one morning. It must have been about 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. I don't even remember. I just remember the tweet of birds, you know, that you ever woke up in those cars, you know, in the morning? I don't know, I have many, many a times woken up in a seat of a car all slumped over with something all over you, and you hear that little tweet, 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 and it's those birds, that are waking you up, and that's what I heard when I got out of that jail, and I said, well, it's got to be early, But I walked downtown Long Beach, and I had these old clothes on, and I hadn't had a bath, and I don't know how long, and a beard, and Jesus, I stunk. Ugh. I could smell myself, and I knew how bad I was, but how you're sober and you're drunk and you're not either one, and I was in that, and I was sick, and I was shaken, and I needed a drink, and I didn't have any money, and I don't know, something hit me right at that moment, and I had a sister-in-law that worked in UCB, United California Bank, right downtown Pine Avenue in the city of Long Beach. And I said, by God, I'm going to find that bitch and I'm going to get some money out of her. Because she hated me. That woman hates my guts. And I knew it. So I said, well, I'll finish her off. This will do it for her, So I walked up to the front of that bank, and her desk sat right there in the window at Pine Avenue, and I put my hands and my face up to that window. And her hair stood straight up. Just like that. I'll never forget the look in her face. And she come running. She's a little short, pudgy thing, And she come running. I bet she did that 50-yard dash in 2 seconds. She come out that door and she says, Christ, what do you want? And I says, I just want a $5 bill. I said, that's all I want. I got to get sober. And she says, wait here a minute. And she ran back into that bank, and she come running out there, her purse, stuff dropping on the ground. She says, here, and get out of here, and don't ever come back again. I just ruined it for her. She knew that she was through in that bank. My brother finally told me later, my older brother, that it almost destroyed her for a month. That made me feel good. He doesn't know it, but I had no remorse or guilt over that. And to this day, I don't think I've ever... Yes, I have. Yes, I have. Yes, I have. I work a program in my life today. I have made amends since then. I have made amends since then to them, and told them that I love them, and I meant them no harm, that I was a sick alcoholic, and that I had a disease. And he kind of giggled, because I don't think he understood what I was saying at all, and I don't think he does today. But they respect me today. They don't want me around today. I know that they're scared to death of me today, and that's understandable. So our paths don't cross on a social basis or anything. I haven't sat down socially with my family for a long, long, long time. We've seen each other at funerals. That's it. And briefly, we never even had services because of that. I don't think anybody wants to get reacquainted. But anyway, I left there that morning, and I had a few moments of clarity. And I walked. I don't know how far I walked. I walked for several miles. And I knew a woman that was on the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And for some reason or another, I stopped and I got a half a pint of booze. And I stuffed it back here in the back of my shirt, back here in my belt. And I went up there to her place, and I knocked on her door, and she happened to be there, as luck would have it, saved, and she looked at me and she says, oh my God. She says, oh my God. She says, what has happened? What has happened to you? And I collapsed in her doorway. And she got a hold of a couple of people, and one of them happened to be the prosecuting attorney for the city of Norwalk, who is a member of our program. And apparently these people came down, and they took me to a recovery hospital. And I thought they were going to transport me because I was so sick. But they didn't. They loved me for about 8 days of going through the shakes and the DTs, and kept telling me that they loved me. And I kept looking at these people, and I say, you can't love me. You can't love me. You can't look at me and say that you honestly love me. I said, you're a bunch of lying son of a guns. I says, if you can look at me, I said, no one ever has looked at me, I said, in the last 5 years and said they love me, But these people did. About 8 days of going through the shakes and the DTs, and kept telling me that they loved me. You know, and I kept looking at these people and I say, you can't love me. You can't love me. You know, you can't look at me and say that you honestly love me. I said, you're a bunch of lying son of a guns. I says, if you can look at me, I said, no one ever has looked at me, I said, in the last 5 years and said they love me. You know, but these people did, and they kept it up. You know, and I saw something that I'd never seen before. I saw an honesty in their faces and in their eyes that I couldn't believe. You know, and somehow or other, I felt inside that these people really cared. These people in this little crummy, rinky-dink, cold turkey hospital, I don't even think you could have called it a hospital. It was a recovery house on the Metropolitan State Hospital grounds there in Norwalk, the Nut House. That's where I thought I was when I finally told me where I was. I thought I was in the Nut House, you know, because I thought I was crazy. There's a big guy there. His name was Art McCoy. And Art looked at me and he says, Gary, he says, you know, he says, you don't ever have to live this way again. He says, if you don't want to. He says, I'm going to just ask you one thing. He says, do you want what we've got? Do you want some sobriety in your life? Do you want to live again? You know, and I looked at him and I said, yes, I do. And I honestly did, because I knew there was a better way to live. I knew that there was a better life. I knew that God hadn't intended for me to wind up my life like that and destroying the lives of other people and ripping their hearts out, you know. And I said, yes, I do. I said, help me. He and another guy there said, all right, man, you walk with us and we'll walk with you. You know, take the cotton out of your ears and sit down and shut up and listen. You know, because my wife says it very beautifully, you ain't got nothing to say. You know, sit down, shut up and listen, because you ain't got nothing to say. You know, when you got something to say, then we'll let you know when. You know, and that was it. It was tough love. And these two guys were tough son of a guns. You know, they were tough son of a guns. And I've been afraid to say anything to one guy. I think he'd have killed me. You know. And I stayed there, and I went through there what they call a primary program there, and I went into what they call a supportive program there, and I lived there. I lived there for 3 months. I didn't have a dime. I didn't have a dime. I didn't have a thing. I didn't have any clothes. I had just exactly what I had on my back. I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. And you know, and these people kept saying, "Hey, just keep going to your meetings. Keep coming back. You're going to make it. You're going to make it." I didn't think I was, because I was still shaken. I'd gone through a 30-day program and was still shaken. My whole body shook. My left foot was still a little numb. I was still dragging it a little bit behind me. You know, and I didn't know whether physically or emotionally or mentally I was going to make this program, this simple program. It's not easy. You know, I didn't find that out until later. Told me it was a simple program. I thought sure it would be easy too, but it sure as hell isn't, is it? As we all know. You newcomers in the room tonight, it's a simple program, but it's not easy. And it's going to take every fiber of your body and your being to make this program. You know, keep coming back, a day at a time. And it works. It works, and it works good. You know, my life has been enriched by it. You know, I have done so much in sobriety that I didn't think that was ever possible again in my life. You know, I began to function slowly as a human being. I got some part-time work, and I started functioning, and I started showing up, and I started being a little bit reliable. People started showing a little bit of trust in me, and you know, I was holding my head a little bit more erect, and I was able to share a little bit at participation meetings, you know, about how I felt that day. Nothing more than that, just how I felt that day, you know, and that my feelings and of gratitude, because I had made a surrender in that program situation there that I'd always wanted to make, a surrender to something greater than myself, a power that I call God today in my life. You know, and He's worked in my life now. He's working in my life tonight, because you know, I'm not supposed to be up here talking to you. I'm not supposed to be out there talking to anybody. You know. And I try to come out here and share a message of love and hope, you know, and it's not easy, because I'm frightened sometimes. I'm frightened to stand in meetings, and I'm frightened to go out on these panels and share with these alcoholics and drug addicts that are in these prisons and these hospitals. But I've got to do that today. you know. And it's not an easy program, guys, you newcomers. But by God, it's well worth the time. It's well worth the effort that you're going to put into it, you know. So come on and keep coming back to us, because we love you. You know, sit down and shut up and wait until you're told to say something. You know, it's just beautiful. What's happened in my life are just the miracles of this program. They give us these promises, you know, and I've never received a great deal of the promises that some people think of. You know, the great material wealths and things like this. You know, they're very unimportant to me today. I like to be comfortable, yeah, you know, and I'm comfortable today, thanks to this program and to the principles that this program has given me to live by. I've been able to go out there and function, you know, and show up each day and be responsible, which I wasn't for many years. I'm responsible today. People enjoy seeing me come in. People ask for me. I don't understand that sometimes still today, you know. I just get so filled up with the joy of it that somebody would even invite me into their home. When I was new on this program and somebody said, hey, come on over, we're going to have a meeting at our house. It's your house? You know, because, Jesus, I walked off with your television set. You know, maybe your wife if I could have got her for 5 minutes, you know. But you know, and it was, Jesus, I just get so filled with gratitude over it and so filled with love over it. Because what it's given me is somebody in my life, too, once again to care for and to love. I've got a wife today. She's sober 21 years on the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And we share a beautiful program together today. On a daily basis, we share our lives together. I never thought I'd have anybody in my life again to share it with me. I've never shared with anybody. I never shared with that wife of 23 years. I never looked at her and said, gee, let's read page 54 this morning and start our life off beautiful today. I usually woke up and said, where the hell's the coffee? Or, you know, or, Jesus, I got to get out of here. I can't take you this morning. You're liable to tell me something I don't want to hear. You know, like, where were you last night? I don't have to live like that anymore. I wake up with a beautiful lady and have a beautiful program for living today to start my day off with. We sit at a kitchen table and we get up in the morning and we share our book together. And we share our reading passages together, you know. And we share meetings together and we share institutional work together today, you know. What it's given me is a new life, this program. It's given me a gorgeous new life. And I'll be eternally grateful for the rest of my life. Whether I go tomorrow or whether I go 50 years from now, it doesn't make any difference. I'll still be as eternally grateful then as I would be tonight, standing right here with you. You know, because you see, it's just unnatural for me, the way that I started my life out, and to drink that many years, and to go on and go through the people and the places and the things that I've been through, which are too numerous for me to go into in the short length of time we have to talk tonight. You know. But what I have tonight is you. What I have tonight is a family I never had before in my life. And it's that way everywhere I go, from one end of this state to the other. I think I could go all over the world today, you know, and find friends and family, you know, which I never had. And I thank each and every one of you for that. I thank each and every one of you for sharing your lives with me, you know, and giving me a new life. This program of Alcoholics Anonymous that so dearly loves me, and a God in my life today that dearly loves me, you know, and dearly loves you. And thank you very much.